Mr. van Hooren, after the possible merger of Deutsche Bank and Komets Bank has been called off, what is going to happen now? Are we going to see maybe other offers for one of these banks?
Yeah, I need to rely basically on what I read in the newspapers too, and the rumor around that, as I'm not that close that they tell me as they tell anyone, question mark. But there are a couple of options. First, people are looking to Komets Bank now, as perhaps the result of this, that Komets Bank is ready for an acquisition or a larger merger. That's for quite some time already. There are a couple of banks looking to it. Lloyds Bank was mentioned, the French ones, Paribas and Société Générale, but currently the rumor is mainly around ING and UniCredit from a totally different perspective. So that for Komets, and there's always the standalone option, of course, but perhaps the result of the merger is that something is going to happen, and there's potentially a need for more consolidation in European banking anyway. Then for Deutsche, yeah, they have a serious struggle with defining their core, I would say, is that the global corporate and investment bank, where they were aiming for so long and where they had a reputation, or is it basically a large universal bank in a very fragmented market like Germany? Currently they are both. I'm not sure that that's the best future for them. And then they have the asset management part, the DWS now, which is separated or listed, and there is some rumor that UBS might be interested to merge their asset management.
Would that make sense?
I would say yes, yeah. I would say yes. That goes back again what I said earlier. Banks really need to look to their strategic positioning at the moment, and what I would call define their new core in this again new landscape is all the digital possibilities and really becoming a global market. So are you a corporate bank, or are you a retail bank, or are you a global wealth manager like UBS and Credit Suisse are now more or less, or are you everything together? And I'm not sure that there is that much room for the real universal banks. Perhaps Paribas and Santander do have that opportunity given their size, but all the others need to really have a positioning. And when UBS wants to position on global wealth management, then asset management is important, of course, but do you need to have it in your own organization or your own balance sheet? Or can you combine it and make it even larger? And if you look at what 10 years ago happened in the French market with where Société Générale and Crédit Agricole brought their asset managers together, what's now called Amundi, which is the largest in Europe, a very, very stable, fast-growing, well-established asset manager. And something similar can happen with Deutsche and UBS.
And there's a lot of talk, a lot of opinions about, excuse me, about European banking being overbanked, that consolidation is necessary, also cross-national consolidation. Where do you see Swiss finance and Swiss banks in this perspective?
I would say both. Credit Suisse is a bit more vocal than UBS, in the public opinion, that at least made that smart decision to go for global wealth. In fact, the evolution of private banking, which is really the core of Switzerland as a country, I would say, where you have a pub on every street corner. In England, you have a private bank on every street corner here. So that's really part of the core of the reputation of Switzerland as a country. So to let's say leverage that reputation and to become a global wealth manager, where they are both aiming for, that's quite smart. Then, of course, size matters here too. There's a lot of digitization going on in wealth management too, but there you really have the added value from the personal interaction. So it's a different competitive framework, I would say, for bankers in the future of wealth. But they need to rely on digitization, and that comes with investments. And then you need to be large enough to make that happen.
We have seen quite a few Swiss private banks being very active in the M&A space, Julius Baer, UBP as an example. What kind of strikes me is that UBS and Credit Suisse, the big ones in global wealth management, even they stood on the sidelines. Do you think this is going to change in the near future?
Again, no one told me. I just looked to that from the outside, but I can imagine yes. So again, let's look to Credit Suisse. The initial idea was to separate their Swiss Universal Bank, similar to what Deutsche did with DWS for asset management. And the reason for that was it's a different bank than our International Wealth Management Bank and our Asian Bank, where we entirely 100% focus on the ultra-rich people and do wealth management advice and activities for them. So they are still in that whole process of restructuring and recovering from the financial crisis. But when that's done, then you might argue, do we need both UBS and Credit Suisse with a strong universal bank here in Switzerland, which come to now Bank and Raiffeisen and all the others, or do you have only need for one or two retail banks, and that they focus on their global roles, and then their size matters again, and you need to be close to where your client is when you want to have that added value in the personal interaction. So yes, then I might do takeovers or acquisitions globally, I would say. Same for your question was on UBS and Credit Suisse, yeah.
Both banks, both big banks, they are under a lot of pressure. The stock valuation is down, the margins are going down, revenues don't grow. How do they get out of this?
Again, they are in the still in a phase of recovering or restructuring. So when the new CEO at Credit Suisse arrived, he had that clear program, all very well communicated, and I guess mostly delivered against. So well done. There's that clear focus on global wealth. So I still can imagine that he's going to do something with the Universal Bank. That needs to be done first. Perhaps UBS want to do something with their asset management bank. They still need to get rid of their former reputation as being a global investment bank. Still all the pressure is on the investment bank, where most of the volatility is. But generally spoken, wealth management is from the last couple of years quite a stable business, a growth market, especially in Asia, where they're both focused on. Still a lot of newcomers, let's say, in the being very wealthy, rich people. So it's a good decision. And how large the size, how big they need to become a real global player, I don't know that yet, but that's what they're exploring at the moment, and I can see something happening there yet. And then what doesn't help, of course, is the whole interest situation in the market, or what's going on in capital markets. So that keeps pressure on the investment bank. And the share prices are going down. That's not just here, but they all lost a third of their market cap.
Except for the US banks.
Yeah, exactly. But here in Europe, but that's part of the fragmented landscape. The US banks, which are much more focused on global investment banking, they didn't have that fragmented situation and all the strong regulation here in the last 10 years as we had in Europe. So they were able to take over, and perhaps we need to accept that. And I would say Credit Suisse and UBS themselves as a bank, they accepted that. But again, all the public opinion is about their former reputation as an investment bank.
I mean, clearly what they could use is a more dynamic business model, say, to boost the business. Now, you said size matters in wealth management, which is common knowledge.
More and more, yeah. So personal touch matters and size matters, and that's can be a conflict.
Right. And also digitization is a huge challenge. Would some add-ons in digitization be a way to boost the business?
Yeah, clearly. So retail bank will become 100% digital banking, and I can look to that in Europe quite intense. For instance, ING is becoming a 100% digital bank outside the Netherlands. But you have newcomers like N26 and Revolut, and they will define the new, let's say, the new status for retail banking. And that's 100% an app. You do everything on your app. When I opened a bank account at Credit Suisse, I needed to go to a branch office. For Revolut, it's done in 8 minutes. That's the whole change, and they need to anticipate on that. That's a bit different in wealth management. So that's a question mark. What will the future of the universal banks, the Swiss universal banks, be? But when you look to the wealth management activities, you see robo-advice coming up there. You see much more, let's say, algorithms and all the analysis they do on the assets, the different categories. Because there's a need for information, and there's much more possible now. So you don't need that many people to do the back office work anymore, but you need to invest to get your systems ready. And to be advanced there or smarter than the other, that gives you a competitive advantage, which will be valued, especially in Asia, I assume.
Mr. van Hooren, thank you very much.
Good, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.